For the fifth day in a row, what is becoming a daily occurrence at 7:30 a.m. here. Don't know what time that is in the rest of the world. We get quite a lot of nationalities in the chat: Guatemala, Morocco, Sweden, America, the UK, Australia. So I'm not going to list up all the times that those people might be checking into this live broadcast. But what I will do is I'll do what I do at the start of every single one of these videos, which is talk about how YouTube sent an email to YouTube creators, content creators, and said, anything that's to do with the coronavirus, we will not be monetizing, and channeled content creators will not be getting a benefit out of these coronavirus videos. And that's when I started going live, was because I did not want to make a profit off of somebody else's misfortune. I say at the start of every single video that it's really, really important to me that I don't get monetized for this kind of stuff, and I don't get a financial kickback for it, because what we're doing here is we're just giving a window into Tokyo, into Japan, during this coronavirus situation, and it's really important that people see the reality of the situation. The press and the media, and to a certain extent the government as well, are not doing the greatest job of representing the reality of this situation in any country, as evidenced by Australia having a run on their supermarkets the other day, when they had 30 cases of coronavirus in the whole country, and supermarket shelves were bare, and people were going out and bulk buying toilet paper and rice and things like that. So for sure, there's a reaction to this. And one of the things we say in my line of work is that you shouldn't react to something, you should respond to it. Don't react to something, respond to it. And I feel like this coronavirus situation has been much about reactions and not very much about responses. So good morning, Jan Grace. Nice to see you well. And nice to see you too. I'm very well, thank you. I can see 3 people are in the chat, and yet nobody has given me a thumbs up, which would be kindly appreciated. Thanks for joining us. I believe Jan Grace is in Spain, so that's another country ticked off of our international list of countries who are checking in to find out how the coronavirus is going here in Tokyo, Japan. So but yeah, it's really important to me that people understand that this content, I'm making it because YouTube have clearly said that they're not going to monetize this kind of content, and they're not going to give a benefit to us content creators for that, and that's important to me. I don't think it's fair for people to do clickbait. I don't like clickbait at all, which is when YouTube content creators create something that looks like it's more than it is, and people click on it expecting this, and they end up getting this, and they're disappointed. And equally, I don't think it's morally in the world at large appropriate for people to make profit or gain off of somebody else's misfortune or weakness, and that's what coronavirus is right now. So so I was glad to see that YouTube said no, we're not going to let our content creators make profit or gain off of this situation. And then I thought, well, then I will go live from Tokyo, Japan, and show people what's going on in the city at large, because it was, there was some pretty interesting press going out there around the world about the situation in Tokyo, Japan. So and because of that, so this is the 5th video I've done like this, the 5th day in a row, and I think I'm going to try and do as many days in a row as possible, and especially for the duration of this virus situation. And I think there's 2 things that are going to happen with that. One is this will end up being a good kind of log of the reality of the situation as it continues to grow here in Japan and around the world, and we'll be able to sort of get a broad picture from start to finish of the situation as we do this daily for the next however many weeks this situation lasts. But also it's there's a second thing I was thinking about. It was like to do with that you get that real picture of what's going on, and that real view into the world at large. Are the father and son there playing catch? They are not. That's one of our measures about whether or not things are going well or badly in this country. And I do this every morning. I'll do it now, that over my shoulder here, let me see, there, right there, look at that, there you go, that you can see a couple out there going for their morning run, and that's one of the things that I really try to do in the videos, is to show people real life in the background, so that you can see people actually going about their daily lives. And you can, that's why it's live as well, is that you know that people that I didn't just choose the opportune moment or create the scenario that shows Japan in a light that's not actually true. But the father and son who have played catch 3 out of 5 days that we've been here would normally play catch right about there. But I'll keep it here because a couple of people are going to run there. Yep, a couple of people are going to run across there. Morning, Cedar, Australia, if I remember rightly, I hope. Thank you for checking in. I was just showing Jan, who's in the chat, that our people who play catch here are not there right now, which is a bit worrying, because that's one of our measures for if people are panicking in Japan, as if those people aren't playing catch there. However, you can see, look, there's a kid, it's 7:30 in the morning, there's a kid doing laps in the park, and that's definitely because schools are closed. You never see kids in the park at 7:30 in the morning in Japan. Well, never, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but rarely. Oh, there's somebody there though. This is good to see. There she is right there, and the weather is it's a bit overcast and cloudy today, but this woman right here is doing Tai Chi, and she's been there a few days as well, so you can see she's got her morning routine and she's not too fussed about it. But many people aren't all that fussed about coronavirus outdoors, so the parks have been mental busy the last few days, especially with the schools being closed. So and apparently my wife was telling me that she brought our daughter to the park yesterday, and because the schools are closed but people are still working, most of the kids were brought to the parks by their grandparents, which is actually a bad thing, because it's people of a certain age who are more at risk than young people. So if you've now got these people of a certain age going out and mixing with society in a way they don't normally do, you're actually exposing them to risk as opposed to reducing the risk. And especially kids. I mean, kids aren't exactly known, young kids especially, aren't exactly known for keeping their hands to themselves. You know, how many times you see a kid like wipe his nose on his sleeve or stick his finger up his nose or something like that. So so that's kind of a concern, to know that the older generation are actually being activated by this to take care of the younger generation, because schools have been closed, and that will put them at risk. So this is the thing with a decision like closing the schools. So to be clear, 2 days ago the school closures started. Today's Wednesday, so on Monday the school closures started, and they closed them for elementary, junior and high school. I'm not sure about universities, but I know they definitely didn't close them for preschools and kindergartens and nurseries and things like that. And one of the reasons behind not closing the young sort of element of the education society, there's another chap out for his morning run there. There you go, out for his morning run. One of the reasons a couple of reasons why they didn't close the preschools and the young education side of things was because they don't have national holidays like spring break or summer break in the way that regular education institutions do, and also there's a much lower chance of those kids being able to be at home alone, whereas, you know, if you close high school, the kids in a high school could be at home alone, so you wouldn't affect the workforce. So but you've got to, you know, I hope they did think about it. You'd think a government would think about it, but I hope they did think about all the sort of knock-on effects and all the ramifications of a decision like that to close the schools. Who's going to take care of the kids? Where are the kids these days instead of being at school? Are they just going to daycare centres, which have much less ability to deal with and to cope with health issues and things like that? So are they actually more at risk? Are the kids more at risk now that they're not in schools? It's, you know, and hopefully they thought about all those kind of things. So I assumed they were going to force kids to stay at home, but it seems no, not at all. The kids are all over the place. The only thing that, you know, I think was a good decision, I don't know if good is the right word, is so Cedar Andrews in the comments in the chat just now was asking, like, aren't the kids like forced to stay at home and stuff? No, they're all over the city right now, but they closed Disneyland and Disney Sea, so it's good that the kids aren't like all just grouping up at Disneyland or Disney Sea, where, you know, you get like 80,000, 100,000 a day. Not good to be with grandparents. The kids could infect them, exactly, you know. And the mortality rate apparently for 80 years old and above is 20%, which is insanely high. It's a very, very high mortality rate. And but I mean, 80 years old is fairly old, you know. 70 is pretty old. You know, anybody who's 70 years old, that's fairly old, getting on a bit, you know. Golly, I mean, I don't even know if 70-year-olds are able to type on their computers. Are they, Jan? Mo Gaines. Oh, Mo Gaines. Now I need to divulge something to people here. Mo Gaines, could you do me a favor and type "Hi Jan" in the comments, please? I'd appreciate it if you would do that for me. Hi Jan, Jan. And then Jan, if you could do me a favor and write back "Hi Mo," I'd really appreciate that. Because Mo Gaines, you just met my mother. Jan is my mum, and Mo is an absolute legend, mum. He's an absolute legend. He's one of the greatest people in the world, and I've never met him face to face, but I have an awful lot of what's the right word for it? Oh my goodness, I don't know what the right word is for it. Mo's just a great guy, and I appreciate him very much. And it's cool that you guys get to meet. So, and yeah, so Mo, hello, Mum's pleasure to meet you. Yes. So the Mum's in Spain. Mo's in Trinidad and Tobago. Mum. So it's cool that we're connecting like the entire northern hemisphere. That's just got the Americas, Asia, and Europe all in one little sort of connection there. So. But yeah, so the chat, the situation with the schools, the kids, yes, they're out there, and mum who is 70, yeah, and can type on a computer. But the situation, yeah, having grandparents taking kids out to the parks instead of kids being at schools it's like schools, at least they have hygiene and they have procedures, for making sure that kids are, I don't know, washing their hands and all that kind of stuff. So. Talking about it, I'm not an OG, get at. I'm just reading the comments just now. So they, you got to, I don't know if this decision to close the schools, the knock-on effect of that is going to be quite serious, in that you've got these kids who aren't going to school anymore. They will be going to some kind of babysitting service, where the babysitting service doesn't have the capacity to care for their needs in the same way that a school would. Schools are trained for those kind of things, and that's one of their main functions, is the health and well-being of their the kids and their safety in there. So closing the schools could be a short-sighted decision. However, clumping together 300, 400, 500 people in one place is a surely quick way to spread an infection as well. So it's a difficult decision. I appreciate that for the government to take. So. I don't know which risk you're having them at school or having them out. Yeah, it's one of those things. There's a saying that I super appreciate in life, which is hindsight is 2020, and hindsight surely is 2020. After the fact, you can look back on it and say, you know what we should have done? We should have closed the schools, or you know what we should have done? We shouldn't have closed the schools. You know what I mean? Like that's what people will be saying in hindsight, but it's foresight that's the killer. It's knowing what the right decision to do beforehand, not after the fact. And we'll know that in a couple of weeks' time. It's interesting because the Japanese government were talking about how we've got 2 weeks to sort this thing out. The next 2 weeks will be crucial, will be critical to what happens with this situation with the coronavirus and whether we're able to contain it or not, which they've been saying for a couple of days now. It started with the closure of the schools, which was announced last Thursday, which is almost a week ago now. And but now what's really interesting about that is that the World Health Organization have started to say the same thing. The World Health Organization are also saying this next 2 weeks is going to be absolutely critical. And for me, what I read into that is that what they're talking about is that the weather will start to get warmer, and if we can get through these 2 weeks, and when the weather warms up, it might have an effect on how contagious this virus is, and it might slow it down, which does tend to do with these kind of viruses. The common cold is a coronavirus, and it slows down once you get into the warmer weather. Influenza slows down once you get into the warmer weather. APB, I'm really good. I just bought a new house. Congratulations. It's nice to be buying a new house. Is it nice and big? Is there a shoe room in it? But yeah, it's important to consider that kind of thing and make sure that those kind of decisions are being made well. But so there's a lot going on right now. So do you know how long they are keeping the travel bans between China and China? I couldn't find any dates. The thing with China and the travel bans is that they're not like a federal travel ban by the whole country. They're done by sections of China. So Shanghai has a different travel ban to Beijing, for example, whereas Shanghai said that they're banning travel from countries with a big walk-in closet. Ooh. They're banning travel to countries with, something like a serious coronavirus situation, which is about as vague as you can be. They can decide for themselves what serious means, and it doesn't specify whether we're talking about serious like in Iran, where there's the second most number of deaths in the world behind China for this, or whether we're talking about serious like, Nigeria, where they've got like their first couple of cases. So that's open to interpretation. Whereas other parts, I think Beijing itself named the countries, the region that Beijing is in, named the countries that cannot travel there without going into a 14-day quarantine. And they named Japan, Korea, Italy, Iran, and they said if you're coming from these countries, you'll be going into read yesterday that the Chinese people are putting people into high-risk areas into quarantine for 14 days if they're coming from certain places, but it depends, on the region of China, which countries that they're going to target with that ban. Of course, there's a certain irony to that in the fact that China are reducing travel to their country to protect them from the virus that traveled out of their country. But that leads me on to kind of another thing I wanted to talk about today was that we've really got to be careful, and I just hope anyone who watches this really gets this message, but we've really got to be careful not to turn this into a discrimination thing. We really have to be careful about that. I'm reading news often about people being discriminated against. There was a chap in London from Singapore who was beaten up, and while he was being beaten up, the people were saying to him, get your coronavirus out of here. There were people on the trains here in Tokyo, Japan, shouting at each other like, you're coughing on this train, you shouldn't be on this train for coughing. People cough. That doesn't mean you've got coronavirus. I know there have been people talking about the Chinese. Viruses don't discriminate. Gosh, people are so stupid. Exactly. It's a biological thing, and viruses don't believe in borders. They don't get to a border and say, oh, I forgot my passport, I'm not going to cross over from this country to that country. That's not how viruses work. It's not how biology works. It's not how nature works. But I'm starting to see an uptick in sort of discriminatory news about people being targeted or people being, you're of Asian appearance and that kind of stuff. So I just really hope that anyone who watches this just get off of any sort of vibe that has anything to do with discriminating against people because of how they look, and then saying, you're at fault or you're to blame or you're dirty or whatever because of this coronavirus. The discrimination element of this has the potential to be quite drastic, especially given the current climate in the UK and America especially. I'm going to say those two places particularly, but in other countries where they have almost systemic problems with this kind of thing. But with the climate in the UK and America over the last couple of years, where it has been a lot to do with sort of national pride, there is also the risk of what could happen on the other extreme of that, which is yes, it's good to be proud about things and to take care of your family and take care of your own and that kind of stuff, but equally that doesn't mean that you have to push other people down. I don't believe in a system where I need to push somebody down so that I can raise myself up. I think I can raise myself up without having to push somebody else down, generally, not just about coronavirus. So Synchronic, am I reading that? Synchronic, how's the area you're in? Has it had any cases? Not the area I'm in that I know of had any cases. I do this every morning, and I try to show people. There's a guy behind me somewhere. There he is. Can I get my finger in the shot? There he is, out for his morning run. So there are people out there just living their lives and doing their normal routine here in Tokyo, Japan. So 6 cases in the Caribbean as we speak. We have no masks in the country as well. Yes, and that's, I mean, we were talking about the discrimination. Thanks, Synchronic, totally appreciate that. I'm trying to do this every day, and I do make a point of talking about how I don't get monetized for this kind of content. YouTube sent an email that said content creators will not get monetized for this kind of content. So I started making it, because I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna profit off of other people's loss and things like that. This isn't clickbait. But it's important that people see the reality of the situation, that they see people in Tokyo, Japan here are out for morning runs. They're leading their daily lives, their regular daily lives, and we do it every morning live so that I can show you the reality of this. Now I show you this this junction every morning, every single morning I show you that junction, and you can see the cars traveling and people going about their daily business. It's now 7:55 in the morning, and it's a little bit chilly, a little bit overcast, but you can see people still going about their daily lives, just regular cars on the roads down there. I showed you the guy running earlier, and the woman doing Tai Chi in the park as well. Thank you for 10 people being in the live. The record so far is 12, so we're getting close to that record. Please do drop a like though, I would appreciate that. So one of the markers is that, let me just read what Seda says. I'm just finished media so hard, news trying to get more news from people. Like, yeah, actually that's so true, Cedar. Cedar's saying that, he's looking for people who will give him the reality on the ground, not just the media spin or not just the government sort of propaganda about what really is happening. And that's exactly why I do this live. If I get to a situation where I can't do this live, I wouldn't see the point in it. There's no point in you guys checking in on somebody who's in his bedroom talking about the scenario. You might as well just watch the news. So that junction back over there is one thing that we look at every morning. Another thing we look at every morning is this right here, which is the highway across the river. The river there is the Sumidagawa River, and that highway there, you can see that bus just traveling along there. So these things I think are really important because they give a measure of the reality of people just going around their normal lives and doing their normal routines, and you get that sense that this isn't a city in panic, it's not a city in lockdown, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that might come down the line, that we might end up in a scenario where they do start to look at some pretty drastic situations if they can't contain this. But then that leads me all the way back around to why are they trying to contain it? Cherry blossoms in the back are so beautiful. Yeah, that's actually, I think it's a plum blossom, to be totally accurate. The plum blossoms bloom first, and then towards the end of March you'll get the cherry blossoms. And I'll get as close as I can to this tree so that you guys can get a wee look. It might be, let me get right up close to it, and then I'll get right up in it. There you go, look at that. Ooh, I'm actually getting poked in the back. That would be a great screenshot. Hello. But you can, the reason I'm getting this close to it and get right up in it, hello, as you can see how pink it is. Next to, yes, Hanami, the Hanami's beautiful, and it's going to be early this year. It's been warm. It's been a warm winter, so the cherry blossoms will kick in. Now there's, I don't like to put Japanese people in the video without their consent. You know what I mean? So that lady there, though she's taking a picture of a tree, and I'll show you that tree in a minute, but there's a person out in the morning taking photographs of trees in bloom. Like, the country's not falling apart if people are doing that. Like, if people are secure enough to go out and be like, yeah, I'm gonna, oh, there's a pretty tree, I'll take a photo of a tree. If you were panicking about coronavirus, and if we were worried about, the ability to fight this thing off, then you'd be, you wouldn't be doing that. Guys, hit the like button. Yes, please do hit the like button. Thank you very much. This here is this is great because I have a 2-year-old daughter. She loves this thing here. This is where she plays every day. Now I appreciate just giving you guys that truth, young peso. So this is the kids run around up here. There's a slide there. There's a net they can climb on here. They can go through this pipe here, and it sort of swings back and forward. But it's right now, just before 8 o'clock in the morning. There's a clock over there that I look at, and you can see here you've got a couple of young mothers, and their kids are already playing before 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's because the schools are closed. And these people have nowhere to go and nothing to do, the just closing the schools without much help is not a great thing to be doing. That tree, Jan, I don't know if I should call her Jan or Mum. Hello, Mum. That she just commented on the tree. Here's the tree that the old lady was was taking a photograph of. Let me just pop that behind me there. But like I say, I mean, she wouldn't be taking a picture of that in the morning if she wasn't freaking out about the coronavirus. So things are very kind of stable here. I am worried about that discrimination element that's coming down. Thanks, Mo. That's coming down the line. I'm seeing more news about people being discriminated against or people being targeted because of either what they look like or because of their coughing or something like that, and people are then getting on their case about it. I consistently say I'm worried about Iran and what will happen in Africa if this thing gets into Africa and it spreads there very quickly. I just do get that sense that we're in a race against the weather, and the idea is to try and get to a point where it's warm enough for the weather to defeat this thing for us, because we're not going to be able to do it ourselves. And I also do make a point, I haven't said it today yet, but Tokyo Sky Tree right there does Japan have the same social media as the Western countries? Starbucks, I'll get on that in a sec, but I was just going to say that Tokyo Sky Tree there is pretty central to Tokyo, so that you know that I'm giving you this news live from Tokyo, and it's live, so you know it's real. And there's Tokyo Sky Tree, so you know it's central. Starbucks was just saying there is about sensationalizing the media and the news. Japan has a pretty good news system in that every channel pretty much gives you the news like it's public broadcasting, and not like it's Fox or MSNBC, is that what they call it? Hello, Mum. Those channels, like Fox and those channels in America especially, tend to sensationalize the news because they're in it mostly for money and for advertising and for sponsors and things like that. Magnolia, is that a magnolia tree? I don't know that. But the news here on every channel. So you've got a public channel called NHK, which is like Nippon. I don't even know what it stands for, but it's like the Japanese national channel, the government-funded channel. And then you've got a bunch of other channels. I'd say there's about 6 channels in Japan, those terrestrial channels that everybody gets on their telly that they can just press the remote and they all get. Of course, there's satellite and cable and all that kind of stuff. But focusing on the regular channels, you've got one main national broadcaster, and then you've got about 5 national broadcasters who are in it for the money, who are paid to get commercials. That's where they generate their cash from. But consistently across all of those channels, the news is delivered in a way that I like news to be delivered. And just because I like it doesn't mean it should be so, but I think it should be so because I believe in it. But I like news to be delivered where they give you the facts, and then you have to decide what you think of the facts. And the onus is on the viewer to form an opinion based on the facts that they've been presented with. It really bugs me when news is about the presenter offering their opinion and saying, this is what I think about this, or this is what this means. I don't think it's up to the news to tell the viewer what something means or what opinion they should form. That's up to the viewer. The viewer should be the one who says, right, I've looked at 3 or 4 different sources of information, and based on those 3 or 4 sources of information, here's my personal conclusion based on that. But that whole idea seems to be removed from the news cycle right now. Exactly, it is talk show, it's opinion pieces. The news used to be, when I followed news more regularly, it used to be about presenting the facts, whether it was a newspaper, whether it was online, whether it was the television presenting the facts. But these days it's like editorials. It's like everything's an editorial, which is someone's opinion piece, and then you get a couple of flat facts sort of thrown in almost just as an afterthought, and that it really drives me nuts. However, in Japan, primarily, mostly, the news is more about just presenting the facts. And they're very aware, like super aware in Japan, of the effect that presenting news can have on society. They're really aware of it. It's quite profound to watch Japanese news, because what you see is you'll see a story that will run for 1 or 2 days and then it's done. Whereas in other countries that story would go on and on and on, and they probably measure how many views they're getting, and they'll keep the story running until the views start to drop. They don't drop the story when the interest isn't there anymore. They don't drop the story when it's not in the country's interests anymore. They'll keep the story going and going and going, because they can milk it for the money that it's worth. Whereas here in Japan, they tend not to do that. A story will be in the news for 1 or 2 days at the most, and that's exactly how I think it should be. Yeah, right, the stories with narco, they go for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you know that they're milking it. Celebrity media figures, right. Yeah, it's become a thing. Like, I mean, is it Matt Lauer, maybe? Is that a guy who's in news in America? I shouldn't know his name. I shouldn't know the name of a broadcaster, a news broadcaster. That's not, their job isn't to be famous. Their job is to present the facts to us. And so it's really important to me that the news is presented in such a way that you form the opinion. You watch the news, you form your opinion, you decide. And the problem with this coronavirus thing is that that's not how the news is being presented. That's not how the government are presenting their news. What they're doing is that they're sensationalizing it, and they're scaring people. And now I think they've realized they can't get the toothpaste back in the tube. It's like, oh God, we've got this situation that's getting out of hand now, and we can't scale it back down anymore. How do you scale it back down when the death toll keeps rising, when the number of cases keeps rising, when the number of countries where the infection's being found keeps rising? You can't really scale that back. So they've already sort of pushed that first domino, and now the domino run is off and running, and they're like, oh crap, how do we get out of this now? How do we stop this snowballing? And it's too late now. So I totally appreciate the Japanese news for not being sensationalist. It's not like a TV show. Sometimes when I watch other countries' news, it's hard to delineate between the TV show and the news, because they look so similar. You know, is this a talk show, or is this the news? Is this, like a chat, like Oprah Winfrey or Ellen DeGeneres or something, or is this the news? But in Japan, there's no mistaking it. It's very, very clear that you're watching the news on all channels, and not just the public broadcasting channels, but all channels. And they just present you with the facts. Now, there are a couple of TV shows that aren't like that, but they're TV shows. They're not the news. The news itself just tells you what happened, and then stops, and that's it. And you rarely hear the presenter's opinion, if at all. And also when crimes come up, these big crimes, there have been a few here in the last couple of years, they don't run in the media. They report it the day it happens, finished, and then maybe 6 months later they report the court case, finished. France does not have the means to provide tests for doctors in reality. There are more patients. Mama Jan Gracie, it was a blessing. Great to see you, Mo. Luckily, we're in the right place. Japan is one of the countries total awareness of anything critical of society. Yeah. So it's good to have France in the house. France, that's a first for the live. Thank you very much, France, for dropping by. Thanks, Mo, for dropping by, who's popping out now. That's another country ticked off our list. We've had Morocco, France, Japan, Australia, Guatemala, Trinidad and Tobago, America. Did I say Australia? Japan. It's quite incredible the number of nationalities that have joined us. Appreciate that. You too, Mo. Stay safe and stay blessed and stay amazing. Stay awesome. Mo Gaines, man. No offense to the rest of the world, but I would happily just sit and chat to Mo Gaines in the live for hours and hours and hours. That guy's an awesome man. But yeah, like the situation and with the news and stuff, it's a thing. But South Africa, hello. You don't know Joss Josephie, do you? I have a friend, a South African friend called Joss Josephie. She's a lovely woman. So yeah, the news thing, it's really important to try and get your facts from people who have them in reality, as it were, and aren't just trying to boost ratings and boost viewership and things like that. And it seriously is one of the reasons why I'm doing these lives, is so that I can give you guys a look into the reality of what's going on in central Tokyo.